Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patrick Mclaughlin, coming from Ireland. I have to present downstairs in 25 minutes, so I'll try to be efficient here. If I can master this up and down thing.
You push it up and down, and eventually it comes to life. Okay, but we can try it.
That's too advanced.
Yeah. Okay, I press forward and back, and maybe then it comes to life. Now try.
This one,
yeah? It sometimes needs some. Oh, now it works.
Okay. Thank you.
So up and down.
I can always use this. Okay, so firstly, anything I say about products, you shouldn't fully believe, because we're being a product and services company, things can change. So there's a safe harbor statement here. Oops. So I have a very simple agenda. What is digital about? What we can offer in Oracle to secure digital, and a couple of customer cases at the end. So something about digital business. Well, hopefully you are aware of this. So there's a big push on the other side of security, which is to get as many people online for as often as possible, and to service their needs very well, and to deliver a great customer experience. On mobile devices, taking into account social networks, leveraging big data and analytics about the people, their background, their behavior, so you can serve them well. And that doesn't sit so well with security, but somehow we have to reconcile digital and security and fit them together. Just some more points on digital. So firstly, digital assumes everyone is connected. So all people, all things, all businesses are connected is an assumption. It assumes a great degree of integration. So we have seamless process integration across every channel, across networks, applications, services as part of the vision. The intelligent bit is interesting. So we assume continuous analysis of raw data to provide real-time insights and decision-making as part of digital. Context, very, very important in digital, so that you can serve your users as well as possible. And personalization, or people-centric, depending on if you're a consumer or an employee or whomever. Here's maybe a more simple picture around digital. On the right-hand side, you see that digital is trying to leverage social, mobile, cloud, and indeed big data, probably non-big data as well, relational data and traditional unstructured data. And in the middle, and we've heard quite a bit today already about the Internet of Things. So those things should be leveraged in a good way and an innovative way by companies to deliver a great customer experience, to improve the efficiencies of companies, and perhaps to deliver completely new business models. For example, like Uber in the taxi business, or Airbnb in the hotel business, let's say. So you might get completely new disruptive players coming into the digital space. Most people are not going to be disruptive. They will instead try to use digital to transform their existing company, to make it more meaningful to young users in particular. So digital is here to stay, so we need to do something about security. Before I go into what it is we do about security, downstairs in 20 minutes, I guess, I will talk about the European Union forthcoming regulation on data security, which we expect in the spring, so sometime January, February, March 2016. This particular regulation applies to all data processing systems about all EU citizen data, regardless of where that data is held. It doesn't have to be held in the EU. It could be in the US. It could be in South America. And what is interesting, and maybe that's not the right word, is to encourage companies to really avoid data breaches. In the next 10 years, there will be very high fines. So it's still being negotiated, but companies may have to pay up to 100 million, or even 2%, and some are saying 5% of global revenue, not global profits, global revenue, which for someone, let's say, like Oracle, would be a very large number. 2% or even 1% of global revenue would be a very significant amount of money. So there's strong encouragement within the EU, and we're in the EU here in Latvia, to get it right, or to make a great effort to get it right. I should say there's no such thing as 100% security. And indeed, what I'm going to present from Oracle has to be added to by companies like Symantec, who have anti-malware, antivirus type solutions and network security type solutions. But I believe we can go a long way using traditional, quite well-proven methods in the enterprise world. So here's a very simple picture. We have some people on the top left, we have some devices, we have some mobile devices, tablets, and on the bottom part of the picture on the left we have on-premise IT systems, and on the right we have cloud systems, perhaps from Microsoft, from Google, from IBM, from Oracle, whoever. So we are going to have people and indeed devices accessing and using applications and getting information from these other back-end systems, if I call them that, so both on-premise and off-premise. And we need some kind of security architecture to cope with this. So what do we need to do? Some of the things we need to do is start by managing these users in a good way, managing devices in a good way. If some device is no longer working or no longer in service, it needs to be taken off the network, so deregistered or revoked in certificate terms. What else do we need to do? All devices and all people would need to authenticate and strongly authenticate, in fact, before being granted access to any services. One of the major elements in data breaches, as reported by Verizon, is the use of stolen credentials, stealing people's passwords. Passwords, the world runs on passwords, in some ways unfortunately, but it really does. But we can, as you'll see in a moment, we can add to the password world and build a stronger authentication model to help prevent attacks using stolen credentials. So after authenticating people, one needs to authorize them, either devices or people, and of course keep a log or audit what they've been doing. So nothing very radical or new, in fact. Between cloud and the on-premise world, you may need to integrate user accounts across there. You have to do user management across both the on-premise and the off-premise worlds. What else do we need? And also there are entitlements. We should always protect data at rest, and I'll say on the next slide how we should do this. Again, it's known how to do this. It's not something impossible. Next, we need to also protect data in motion. Again, not something that's impossible. It can get a little bit harder with some people who are trying to insert Trojans into browsers, etc., in order to prevent, in order to get at the information before it gets protected, for example, encrypted. If we do these kind of things, we have some kind of end-to-end architecture. What is interesting in this picture, before I go into some more detail, is there isn't a single measure. So at Oracle, and indeed in the wider industry, we talk about two major things. One is defense in depth. So you need multiple layers of security, not just one. So this is at the application level and the data level and the people level. You need many measures across your architecture. And the second one is the idea of least privilege. People or devices should only need to be given the minimum amount of access to do their jobs, or in the case of devices, to function properly. So least privilege and defense in depth are still valid in the digital world and indeed in the cloud mobile type landscape. So this picture is going to try to be, as Oracle does sell product solutions. We don't just talk about the problem, we try to provide solutions. So this picture is I'm going to walk through and talk a little bit more about the functionality of the solutions very briefly, and point on the right-hand side which product that maps to. So for both people and things, you need a directory. So you need an LDAP repository for storing information about the thing or the people. Something not new either. So we have one of those, and indeed many other suppliers do as well. Access control, very important. So we have to have single sign-on and strong authentication across both the on-premise or private cloud part and the public cloud part. So we need to support strong authentication and federated single sign-on. And I don't have time to go into that, but you have to allow a user to be able to log into both on-premise and off-premise worlds transparently. And when you do that, you still do your auditing and logging. The bottom gray box, you need to protect APIs, so application programming interfaces. Most commonly now, those are presented with REST, but of course we have SOAP still around and will be around for many years. So we need to protect APIs. So that's kind of application level firewalling. That kind of happens at the outer perimeter. And that's from Oracle is something called an API gateway, but I don't want to focus on solution names. User lifecycle management. So if someone joins an organization, they have to be given access to the right things, the on-premise things to do their job, and the off-premise things. When they leave or when they change role, you need to revoke those rights and take away those rights. The same is true for devices. You need to give them minimum access, the least privilege idea. And that's essential. I mentioned EU data protection. That's essential clearly for compliance with laws. If you want to have a reasonable shot at complying with regulations, you need to manage users properly. And that's a whole area I could talk for an hour on identity governance, but just to give you an overview. Mobile devices need to be secured. I mentioned protecting data at rest, so you need to protect data at rest. You need to strongly authenticate the user and the device. So we can strongly authenticate the user and the device, and even the app that is connecting back to the enterprise is digitally signed so that you can recognize it's a trusted app connecting to the enterprise. And of course, data encryption on the wire. Protecting data in motion is normally done with data encryption, by the way, I didn't mention. So lastly, all I'm going to say in this picture is we have a whole range of database security add-on tools to help protect data in the database. And that's aimed at protecting against potentially malicious insiders or somebody who has acquired the username and password of an insider, such as a database administrator or a systems administrator, and wants to take on their privileges and do some nasty stuff, either deleting information, changing information, or copying information. So we can encrypt data, we can mask data before moving it out of production into test and development. The key thing is not to be using production live data in test environments, otherwise it can escape from there. So you should mask it first. We have a key management solution for managing in keys that are there for encryption. We have a SQL-type firewall protecting against things like SQL injection attacks. Very relevant for cybersecurity. It and the API gateway will stand out as firewalling type, higher-level firewall-type solutions. You need to do a lot of monitoring and auditing. So it's not just enough to collect log information. You have to aggregate that and sift through it and be able to recognize bad events, bad type events, security events. And we have tooling for that. That all fits under our database security options. I do have the small yellow elephant, the Hadoop system here. And again, I could talk for 1 hour about what we have in the area of Hadoop security or big data security. So we have what comes from Cloudera and some things on top of that, for those of you who know about big data. So just watching my clock a little bit. It's kind of okay. So 2 customer cases in digital. One is Electrabel in Belgium. They're a power company, which is in keeping with the theme of the keynotes about power companies and SCADA systems, etc. They have a goal of getting people to consume less power, which is an interesting idea. Good for the environment, means they don't have to build more power stations. So what they've done is they've built an app for mobile devices, tablets and mobile phones, to allow people to control their appliances remotely. And that means there's a home gateway. There's something that you plug your plugs into that goes between the plug and the wall, a device for detecting when something is on or how much current is flowing. And that system is deployed today, and it's using our access management solution. So this particular talk, I'm talking very much focusing on identity and access management. In fact, for digital, out of most of the customers we see are using access management solutions is the core solution for digital. Maybe the summary of my whole talk here is what we see from real customers. They're also protecting web services. So they're protecting web services that I talked about using our API gateway is one of the goals. And I think, as described in many of the talks already, it wouldn't be very good for a power company to get hacked. It wouldn't do much for confidence or trust among their users. Kind of goes without saying here at a security conference. They do, interestingly, one thing we have in our access management solution is the ability to leverage social networks. Interestingly, even here in this power company case, they do allow people to log in and do certain things with their Facebook identity or their LinkedIn identity or Google or Yahoo identities. I don't have time to go into all of that. So it's using normal traditional access management, but also leveraging social networks. I'd say this OAM thing, Oracle Access Management, is the core piece. And you see this piece of the diagram as well. It's also, there's a whole SOA architecture, service-oriented architecture in there as well. The next case is a mobile banking case. And again, you couldn't really think about mobile banking without having security any more than Internet of Things without security. This happens to be Australian New Zealand Bank. And they want to offer a secure, trusted experience for users on their devices. And they have used our solution for that. And that's going back 2-3 years by now. That's all I would say. They do, interestingly, when it comes to security, they make a big deal about security, and they highlight security, and they emphasize security to their users, as they would like users to know that there's good security as well as a usable experience. So the challenge of digital is to combine usability and customer experience and security. And the good news is about digital, like cloud, we don't see people trying to build cloud services without security at all. The same is true for mobile. So for digital, security is going to come built in. There'll be some errors, of course, and there'll be things to fix, but it's a more positive situation than we've had in the past, where security kind of gets left until the end or after the system is built. And yeah, here in their frequently asked questions, security is high on the list when they're engaging with the users. And I've said this, trust and confidence of online users being key. Again, the architecture is using federated single sign-on. It's using this something called mobile and social. So they have a social component within it as well, even though it's in banking. It's using strong authentication, using something called risk-based authentication, where you ask people questions and give them other challenges other than just having usernames and passwords. And there's also protection of APIs, and underneath it, a directory service. So those are two cases. So my conclusion is, why is security essential for digital transformation or even disruption? To build and enable trust, to limit damage to the reputation of the service provider, whoever they are, a bank or a power company in the cases I've cited. Also to improve the customer experience. You can do that by having quite usable security, maybe too much to go into. And last and certainly not least, with the forthcoming EU data protection law to comply with regulations. So these are the reasons why security in digital is really important. And I think we can go a long way, by the way. Other speakers might have said it's maybe implied it's a bit more intractable. I think this is a tractable problem. There'll always be issues. There's no such thing as 100% security, but you can go a long way. And for example, many companies, including Oracle, are offering cloud services today, and so far they haven't been breached. So you can do a lot with traditional understanding of security. That's everything from me.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Okay, and a nice applause, please. Yeah. We still have 2 minutes until you need to run, so if anybody wants to fire up a question, please do so right now. Okay, so some are preparing for your session downstairs. Nevertheless, a simple question, but a provocative one. Now, especially under the forthcoming EU law, etc., I can be held accountable for releasing a service that uses, for example, some things. Then there's a phones, an app. Then there's my server. There's something in the cloud. Okay, so I made it rest. I made absolutely sure it's encrypted, etc., etc. But the whole infrastructure of the mobile devices is being constructed in a way that apps share information with other apps, and so and so. So question number one, how can I be held accountable in that one thing? Where's the breach? And another thing is, this is the layer that is already being put over the system with almost non-existing standards. So your triangle and the things you describe are almost one of the first times when I see somebody trying to regulate each aspect of the Internet of Things. How should it communicate and be safe? So maybe if you could just elaborate.
Good question.
On that.
How can you be held accountable? Well, the legislation is aiming to reduce the number of data breaches in Europe, but also worldwide. There's cooperation between Europe and other geographic blocks. Most data is stolen from file systems, not from laptops or tablets, because they're typically better protected in many ways than back-end server systems. So most data is stolen from servers. So if the data is stolen either from a database or a file system, forensics will indicate that's where the customer records and the personal information were taken from. It's very unlikely that they'll be taken from an app. Now, it's possible, but in that case, it's more likely to be just a few records. What they're really worried about is millions of records or tens of thousands of records, and that comes from the server side. And we do know how to protect the server-side systems. Whoever's operating those needs to protect them. However, it's the data owner who's responsible, not the person operating the systems. This is a very key point which I need to make downstairs as well. If you own the system and it's your data, you're managing the data owner, you're responsible, not the cloud service provider or somebody else, you. It's you they will come to talk to, and you might say, well, it was so-and-so. Then you need to have a contract to go and sue so-and-so, but you are on the hook, is how it's constructed.
Right, okay. Thank you. Here's a little souvenir, and a nice thank you. It was really, I like this scheme. So maybe if you see him later in the lunch, you could maybe ask for that presentation or do some explanations for that scheme. Thank you very much.